Welcome to Latinos Who Tech. My name is Hugo Castellanos. I'm an engineer and I work in Silicon Valley. I am originally from Caracas, Venezuela, and I've been calling the US home for the last 20 years. When it comes to Latinos in the US, we are 60 million people, but we're only 3% of the workers in science or engineering. As a professional in Silicon Valley, I've had the opportunity to meet some remarkable professionals that work in the tech industry, Latinos like me. With this podcast, I want to bring you a collection of their stories and how they got a job in tech in the first place. And if they had to start all over again, what would they do differently? I want to share with you career advice on how to get a job in tech, how to deal with imposter syndrome, how to find your tribe when you're the only one in the room. This is Latinos Who Tech. This episode of Latinos Who Tech is brought to you by Audible. Audible is the world's premium platform for audiobooks with over 150,000 titles. If you're like me, you're passionate about learning new things, but finding the time to read may be difficult. Audiobooks are a great alternative. You can get a free 30-day trial plus a free audiobook by going to audibletrial.com/Latinos. Go and support them since they support us. Thank you. Pam Martinez, welcome to Latinos Who Tech.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you for making time on a Saturday.
Yeah.
So maybe we can get started and you can tell me your story. How did you get to downtown San Francisco? How did you get here to Silicon Valley?
Yeah. So let's see. So I was born in Mexico. I was born in Parral, Chihuahua, and grew up in Juarez. So I think part of me has always, I was like a border. I grew up around the border. So the United States was always really close to me. And then my family moved to the United States, to Houston, Texas, when I was 9. And I went to school there. I went to high school there. I feel like I learned a lot. And as I was going to college, I moved out here. So I moved to Silicon Valley. I went to Stanford, and that kind of exposed me to the tech world. That's not something that I knew much about or really thought about before.
Got it. So how did you know that you wanted to study, programming, computer science? How did you know that you wanted to do that?
Yeah, I think I didn't really know. It was definitely one of those, crisscross type of paths. When I was deciding on what college to go to, one of the reasons I went to Stanford was because they had really great programs and everything. Because I had no idea what it was that I wanted to do. I was like, maybe engineering, maybe like political science, maybe, I don't know, like the arts. So I went to college with a pretty open mind about what I wanted to do. And then in my first year of college, I took classes in a lot of different departments. And I took a digital photography class in the computer science department.
Interesting.
And that's how I got exposed to computer science. After taking that class, I really enjoyed it. I really liked a lot of the engineering and mathematical aspects of the class. I decided that I wanted to check out the intro computer science classes. And that's how I got exposed to computer science. And after taking that class, I realized that was, out of all of the classes that I had taken, like one of the only classes that I actually enjoyed. I would start my homework early, which didn't happen for any of my other classes. So that was kind of like a sign for me to kind of like stick with the major.
Got it. I love that because we hear often about the idea of STEM, so science, technology, engineering, mathematics, but then also STEAM.
Yeah.
So when you put arts into it, so digital photography, that's another avenue, right? You can get into this world.
Yeah, and like growing up, I loved art. Like I really liked to draw. I liked to paint. I really liked photography. But I also liked computers and math. So I think that digital photography class kind of like combined everything I really enjoyed. And I had never really thought of that as computer science. So that really opened up that STEAM mindset.
Gotcha.
That wasn't as prevalent, I think 10 years ago.
No, definitely.
But I'm really excited that it's a lot bigger now.
Can you tell me a bit about your time in Microsoft and what you did there?
Yeah, so after I graduated college, I decided to try out being a PM, which is like, they call it program managers at Microsoft. So I used to work with the Connect. I used to do research at Stanford for a virtual reality lab.
Okay.
And at the virtual reality lab, we were using Microsoft Kinect to do body tracking. So that's kind of how I got interested in the Kinect and therefore like Microsoft and Xbox. So I got an internship there and then I returned there full time. And then when I joined there, we were about to launch Xbox One. So I joined, I was a PM for kind of like the social platform of the Xbox and kind of launched that in 2013.
So fresh out of college.
Yeah.
And that's impressive.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was really cool to see and be part of like a really big company launch. Because, you know, when you're working at a big company, you have like a very solid deadline. It's like, we have to ship this thing in like this date.
And we have millions of users waiting for it, right?
Yeah.
And there's all this hype built around it. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of hype. And then when I joined, there had been a lot of like requirement changes. There was a lot that was going on at the time. So we had to like change a lot of things and like prioritize and cut things to like really make that deadline. So it was a really big learning experience for me.
So how do you broke into startups? You know, at what point did you decided that, you know, like this corporate, big enterprise life, it's not for me. Maybe I want to go try startups. I'm sure it was like a gradual thing. It wasn't just one day that happened. But I'm wondering how, you know, when do you start thinking about maybe I should go into startup world?
Yeah. So after launching Xbox One, leading up to it, you know, we used to say that we were the startup within Microsoft. We were like, we're like the startup of Microsoft, even though Xbox was like 5,000 people.
That's a big startup.
It's a big startup. So I was like, like launching things and moving quickly was something that really excited me and something that I really wanted to be a part of. And then I think after being a PM, I also realized that I wanted to be closer to the code. I wanted to build things. I wanted to like be really, you know, hands on deck, moving the ship. So I decided that I wanted to kind of like leave. I was like, you know what, I want to give the startup thing a chance. Like I hadn't really worked at a startup at that point. So I was like, I really want to go to a small company. I want to be part of building something. I want to be part of like culture building instead of being somewhere where all of that was set. At that time, education and education technology was becoming really big.
Yes.
And that was another field that really interested me. I taught a class in education reform when I was in college. So I was like, okay, you know what? Like, I want to try out like something more mission driven and I want to go to a startup. So I quit my job and I like just flew back to the Bay and I decided that I was going to like job hunt and like prep for interviews and like look for a place where I could, you know, really have that experience of like building something at a really small team.
Got it. So which one was the lucky first one?
Yeah, so Clever. Clever is a company that makes it really easy for schools to use technology. And at the time, they were working on kind of like an API for schools and like an API for other education companies to integrate with school data. So I moved to the Bay and I mean, I honestly had no idea what I was going to do or how to get into startups. So I moved out here and I just started messaging random people at these companies to learn about them. And I got really lucky and got invited to a happy hour at Clever, where I met a ton of people. I met a lot of the engineers there. I met a lot of, I mean, it was a 30-person company, so you meet everyone.
Right.
And I just loved the culture. I loved their vision. I really felt like everyone was really driven and motivated. It was the first place I actually interviewed at. And I remember people were like, Pam, like, you're supposed to do a lot of interview prep before you do this. But I was like, you know what? Like, this is a place. I want to be here. And then it all worked out and it was amazing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think that tells you the power of connections, right? That of actually setting out these coffee chats and getting to know people. You mentioned getting invited to a happy hour. Because I find that, and we were talking about that before recording, that once you are here, it's so much easier to get connected. And, what are you into? E-learning? I know 30 people that do that. So I'll help you get that job. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think that is a benefit of kind of like being where all of the, movements happening, because you have a lot of those connections.
Yeah, like we are 3 blocks away from Salesforce Tower, and then like Slack is there, WeWork is there. Like you have all these companies around you, and it's almost like, oh yeah, I want to go there. Who do I know there? LinkedIn, find a contact, set a coffee chat, and it's really impressive, because when I was growing up going to college in Florida, I always had this vision of, oh yeah, like Silicon Valley, everything is quicker. I didn't know it was going to be that quick. So it was really, so I've been here for 5 years now, so it's really exciting. So I think this is the right place for me, because it still excites me. That the fact that you get exposure to so many talented folks and all the cool things they're building. So switching gears a little bit, so talk to me about Snowball. What problem do you want to solve? What's going on?
Yeah. So with Snowball, my co-founders and I, so we actually met through the Women of Color in Tech community, and we really bonded over being all like first generation, being women of color in tech. And then another really big part of it was we all had a big passion for like financial literacy. For all of us, like I had to teach myself a lot of financial literacy and how to like survive in like the professional world. And then both of my co-founders, I guess all of us too, like we really bonded over like the student debt space. We're like, this is a really big problem. No one's really doing anything that works out there. It's like convoluted. People, it's, I think, one of the biggest problems of our generation. There's 1.6 trillion of like student debt in America right now. Over 44 million Americans have student debt, and 2/3 of that debt is held by women. So it is a really big problem, especially for women. So that's why we decided to get together, and we're like, we want to like solve this problem. Between the three of us, we have like a pretty varied background. Like I'm the technical person. I've been at a lot of startups. I'm really into engineering. Pearl is, she's had like over a decade of experience in finance and the finance industry. She's built a lot of financial models. She's worked in, done a lot of research in the fintech industry. And then Tanya has started another company before. So we realized that the three of us could really, have a really good shot at like building something that would make a big impact in people's lives. So that's kind of like the big problem and how we got together. And then like how we're doing that, I've been working on this now for like 7 months or so. So like built a web app that, kind of like integrates with your student loan accounts. And we help people analyze their current situation and like give them advice on like what their options are.
So is it something, and again, I know that you haven't launched, so I'm not asking you to like, oh, what does it look like? So I encourage people to go to the website, sign up for the waiting list and check that out. But I'm wondering, do you want to play on that YNAB space, like the daily money management? Or is it more like a personal capital, big picture thing, like a dashboard? Like where do you want to play?
Yeah, so initially we were looking at and thinking about like helping people with kind of how to manage their money. But I think we realized that if we go and even like more niche into like, okay, like for the people who have student debt, what do you need to do? What are your options? And like be more tactical in that angle. So right now, like if you have student loans, like you could change your payment structure. Like a lot of times the default payment structure that you're in might not be the best one. So I think it's like really figuring out what should your right monthly payment be. Then there's like a lot of federal programs out there. Like there's income-based repayment, there's like pay, there's repay. So figuring out which one is the right one for you can also be like a pretty difficult thing to do. And then the last big option is like, should you refinance your student loans? What does that even mean? Like how much money can you save by doing that? So we really try to analyze your student debt information and like help you tackle it that way. Because that's something that we've found is like a really big pain point for people. Gotcha.
So is the vision that, so let's say that I'm I'm a user, I sign up, I use the app, I love it, and then I repay my loans in the, let's say, 16 months. Then I move on? You lose me as a user? Or are you envisioning something else for helping others build wealth?
Yeah, I mean, I think over time, like we're hoping on helping you throughout your journey. Like, you know, and one of the reasons we're tackling student debt is because that's oftentimes like one of the first things that you need to tackle before you can start saving and investing.
Gotcha.
So our long-term version, yes, is to like kind of go beyond just the student debt. So the average American has $33,000 of student debt, and it takes an average of about 20 years to pay it off. So the majority of our users will probably take a little bit longer to pay it off.
Gotcha.
I think we're like really privileged in tech, and like a lot of people have like really great resources to like kind of move a lot faster on that. And we try to help those people. And I think there's also like the other, you know, a very large portion of users who are going to be with us for a much longer time as they're, you know, going through this journey.
No, definitely. And I actually have a friend that, and again, because we live in this bubble, right? This 7x7 bubble of San Francisco.
Yeah.
So things behave here a little differently.
Yeah.
I have a friend that she got her MBA at a top 5 school. And then she got a product manager job at Amazon. And she told me that basically her job offer was, well, so how much debt do you have from your MBA? X. Okay, X plus Y,
Wow.
That's your sign-up bonus.
Yeah.
So again, it's tech, right?
Yeah.
So companies have the luxury of doing those things. But again, you know, not everybody is in that space. But I think that we can build technology that can help everybody, right?
Yeah. And, you know, I think what you just said too, it's like you know, your friend had that amazing opportunity to be able to do that. It's also a great tip for people who are looking for jobs and getting and accepting job offers to negotiate and maybe ask for the company to pay for their student loans. You know, like as you were taking on a job, you can be like, hey, like I have X in debt, like you know, you might be able to negotiate some of those offers.
Yeah.
And get some leverage there. And I think companies are starting to see that investing in employees and investing in helping them with student debt is something that will increase retention, make it easier for people to stick around with them, and like make their companies more competitive. So it's something that we're seeing too in this space, a lot of innovation.
Interesting. Do you have any advice for women that listen to this content and they're in the intersection that, hey, I'm graduating college, I'm interviewing, any advice to them on how to negotiate that first job offer?
Yeah. So we actually have a blog post on our website on like tips for negotiating. And I mean, I think tip number 1 is always negotiate.
Yeah.
Like I think always plan to negotiate, because the worst thing that can happen is that someone's going to say no. And you know, I think one of the big things that we say is like, as you're looking into negotiating, think about all of the different things that you can negotiate. So we have, I think, like a step of like all of the writing down, like, okay, here's like all of the aspects that you can have leverage on that you can negotiate. I think most people think of salary only.
Right.
But in reality, there's a lot of other things like paid time off, you know, like working, like flexibility with your work,
having a
signing
phone
bonus.
Or a late start. Like, like in 2 weeks, or actually like in 4 weeks. You know, so you can take some time off for travel, or you know, enjoy that last summer before you start working. So
yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of different aspects of the offer that you can negotiate. Stock options, that's a really big one here in the Bay Area. So writing that down, understanding what you can move and where you can move the needle is really important. And then another really big one is also like knowing your worth, like having a good understanding of like what is the market rate for like this job position at these companies, and like really understanding the market and then understanding your worth, and then asking for more, I would say, is like a big part of it. Like going in prepared can go a really long way.
Got it. So check out salary.com, Glassdoor, all those websites that.
Yes. There's like a number of resources online to find kind of like your salary, like what people are getting paid for your position. So like leveraging those resources.
Definitely. No, thank you for that. So what's it like being a CTO?
So we're a pretty small team, and like being a CTO is something that I've wanted to do for a really long time, and something that is really exciting for me. There's a lot of challenges and rewards. I would say for me, the most rewarding thing is like being able to jump in and work on a problem that I care about a lot. So like being able to come in and every day building something that will make and save people a ton of money, I think is like really exciting and rewarding. Like my co-founders and I, like we jump in with a lot of user calls, and it's always a really big joy to see that, you know, for a lot of our users, they're saving like thousands of dollars on their loans.
Definitely.
And knowing that that's going to have like a really big impact in their lives and their financial journeys is by far like the most rewarding and exciting thing. And knowing that, you know, I'm the one who's like building and writing the algorithm is like really motivating. And like every time I do that, I'm like, okay, so now, you know, it gets me excited to come into work the next day and like build and make the app even better. So like being able to do that. I think some of the things that are, you know, not as glamorous are like, you know, when you're on a small team, like there's only, you know, you have to be very, very like conscious of what you're spending your time on. So it's like you have to prioritize really ruthlessly. Like, you know, you have to say no to a lot of things. You have to be very realistic about what you can build, and then you have to be really thoughtful about what is actually going to move the needle. So making those calls is really tricky and really difficult. But it's something that, you know, you have to do with a small team. So I would say that's probably the hardest part. You know, even at the smaller companies that I've worked at, I've had like a team around me. So you know, you have like a lot of people to like bounce ideas off of, and you know, like you always have other people so that like if the site goes down, like you have multiple people that can jump in and like kind of help and fix it. I think as a CTO, you have a lot more pressure on you to like be the one who's like on watch and like making sure that everything's always up and running.
Gotcha. So any advice for folks that actually have that idea of, hey, I have my corporate job, maybe in high tech, maybe in tech, maybe I'm a programmer at a smaller institution, and I want to try this startup life. Any advice for folks that want to do that jump that you did?
Yeah. So I think, so there's like 3 things that I recommend, and then I can go into each one of them. I think one thing that really helped me was working at companies at various stages. Another thing, like a second thing I would say is like taking on leadership roles. And then the third thing would be working on side projects. So I think with the first one, like being and getting exposure to different companies and different sizes was like extremely like eye-opening. So working at a big company, understanding how a big company operates, how you get things done, how you build things at scale. You know, then I worked at like Clever and Seesaw, both high growth startups, like seeing how a company like quadruples in size, seeing how a company quadruples their user base, getting a lot of growth opportunities and building a lot of things really quickly was really helpful in terms of like different company sizes. Taking leadership roles, I think that's really prepared me and made me feel a lot more confident about what I'm doing now. Like I was an engineering manager, I was a tech lead. I've led different things with my extracurriculars. You know, if you don't have one of those positions in your job, or you're not interested in doing that in your job, you can often do that outside of work. So I worked with a nonprofit called Whitecore, and I was part of their alumni board. So I got to help that nonprofit grow, and like I was part of it when they hired like more full-time staff. I like helped.
What did they do?
So Whitecore is a nonprofit here in San Francisco in the Bay, and they connect and help people become like leaders in their community. So if you're interested in joining, for example, you can become a project lead, and then Whitecore helps you work with another nonprofit and like work on a 3-month-long project.
Awesome.
And you can use like kind of like your skill set and like to work with a nonprofit.
Got it.
Yeah, so they're an organization that has grown over the last 4 to 5 years, and it's been really exciting to see that trajectory and growth. And I think me being involved in that was really rewarding, but also like really, I I feel like I developed a lot of professional skills too.
I think so, and it's always nice to find that outlet of energy, and that way to give back. It's like we have our tech jobs by day, but then we have our volunteering. So like I have Shep, I do the podcast, and so we all have our side thing that again, it can be something it can be an act of love. Again, you don't need to like be paid for it necessarily, but so it's just a way of using these skills and maybe playing in another space.
Exactly.
Maybe I want to try to be a project manager. Guess what? You are better off trying that at a non-for-profit and seeing if you like it rather than trying to apply for a job and then what happens if you don't like it.
Exactly. Yeah. And, and I think that's where like side projects and side hustles and these other things like give you opportunities to try things with a slightly different like stake. Like you don't have to come in and feel like you need to get it right or perfect the first time. Like you have more opportunities to like try things out, see if you like them, like learn and grow and fail. And then, when you're ready, you can like really kill it when you're doing it. Like you go in at work and you're like, I'm going to be a tech lead now. I'm going to be a manager. Like you've already led a lot of meetings before because you were doing that, in a different way.
Yeah, and I find that there's this experience gap. And again, like we are in a different part of our careers, because we have experience. But when I talk with folks that are students and they want to transition to that first internship or that first full-time job, there's that experience gap of, hey, Hugo, Pam, I don't have anything to put in my resume. Really? Think harder. I'm like, well, like I babysit on the weekends and put that down because that needs time management. That needs customer service. You need to actually talk with people. You're responsible for somebody else's life. And again, you mentioned non-for-profit. So Shep, I always encourage folks that are in college, they have a Shep chapter, to join it. And then if they're interested, make Shep their internship. So if you're interested in photography, you can become the historian and take pictures of all the events. If you're interested more in technical stuff, then you can actually run side projects with the organization. So it's interesting. I mean, there's always opportunities around us, right?
Yes, yeah, that's great advice. I think taking on additional roles with like groups and like Shep is a great one. I was part of Shep too when I was in college. So like finding those opportunities will really help you get that next job.
Nice. No, thank you for sharing that. And then we talk about your current startup and what you want to build. I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit about something that affects a lot of us, so imposter syndrome, because and we've spoken about it in this space in the past, but I'm wondering, how do you cope with it? And then like any advice for folks that are struggling with it?
Yeah, I think so. Imposter syndrome, I think that's something that I've had to deal with my entire life. I think from moving here, being an immigrant here, I feel like I always felt like an imposter in school. And then
Latina, technical, CTO.
Yeah, I feel like no matter how you cut it, like immigrant, Latina, CTO, computer science, it's just like in so many different ways, I feel like I don't fit the mold. I think we were talking earlier that like less than 2% of like workers in high tech are women. I mean, Latinas. And then less than 2% of venture capital funding goes to women. And like, I think it's less than 0.2% goes to women of color in VC funding. So it's really hard out there for, I would say, like underrepresented minorities. So, I think on the imposter syndrome side, it's something that I've had to deal with my entire life. And something that really helps me is, I guess there's two things. One is like really looking back at my accomplishments and looking at how I've overcome challenges in the past. Like that can really be a source of strength. As I'm tackling on a new challenge, I don't look at it as like, oh, like now I'm an imposter here.
Right.
I try to look at it as like, I graduated with a CS degree, blah, blah, blah. I was able to do that, and that was really hard, but I succeeded. As I take on a new challenge, I'm like, okay, well, if I was able to do that, I can do this.
Yeah.
It's like I have these...
Go to your look at your Stanford diploma.
Yeah.
It's right there.
It's like just going back and like reflecting on all of these things that, you've been through. And I think all of us have that. Like we can all look back and, think about like all of the difficult times that we've had and how we've overcome those things and how we've been able to find success. So that's like a really powerful motivator. It's like looking back and like thinking about like how we really have that grit and we really have that persistence and that ability to move forward. And then the second thing I would say is like really have like a community and a support network around you. Like have like family, friends, mentors, people. There's a lot of people in our lives that want to see us succeed, and people who, who are like vouching for us and like thinking about us and care about us. I think that it's always like a really nice reminder and like a way for you to remember that, hey, no, I belong here. I'm not an imposter. I think for me, when I first became a manager, I think I messaged a lot of my old managers, and one of them was like, yes, Pam, like I believe in you. I know you can do this. Like this is something that I've always seen you be able to do. And like those words of like support and encouragement, I think can go a long way and really help you fight back that feeling of like, hey, I'm not good enough or I can't do it.
Gotcha. Oh, that's impressive. Thank you. Yeah. And then how do you stay up to date on technical stuff? Because I'm sure like you code every day, but I wonder when you want to learn something new, how do you go about that? How do you tackle that? Like you have a new framework or anything technical. How do you tackle that?
Yeah. Google is my best friend.
Definitely.
There's a lot of amazing resources out there. I think it depends. Over time, I feel like I found go-to places for different things. Like if it's like, for example, starting something from scratch or starting something brand new, I had to learn about like AWS and the cloud. And for that, there's like a really great resource called like Cloud Guru with like videos that kind of like really cover like really deep technical topics, especially around like databases and security, which are things that are really important for what I do. I think when it comes to like some of these other new trends, there's like a lot of really great Medium articles. So I'm constantly kind of like looking at like web frameworks and like kind of like following what's going on. And then the last one I would say is Twitter. Twitter. There's a lot of really great resources for like startups on Twitter.
Yeah. Any accounts you follow that you like go to that keep popping in your feed, or because I wanted to ask you like any influencers you follow, any folks that inspire you. Doesn't have to be technical, but like people that influencers that you follow.
Yeah. So let me think of some people. Like Tracy Shao is someone I follow.
Okay.
So she posts a lot of stuff about like being a women in tech. She's also a founder. So I follow her, and I follow a lot of other people who are in that space. I follow a lot of people who are part of like the diversity and inclusion community in tech. I find that there's a lot of great technical people there. And then Majors. She's also someone that I follow.
Gotcha.
Charity Majors, who's like another technical manager. She also has a great blog, so I follow her blog as well.
Awesome. So, so I'm sure that your schedule is super packed every week. You have this product you want to ship. You have your action items. You have to lead people. How do you manage your time? Are there things that, let's say that it's Sunday, like how do you plan your week ahead? Is there, you have a system, any tips for people that want to get better at that?
Yeah, so one of the things that I wish I knew earlier, and it's something that I wish I had been able to like learn, like 10 years ago, is really like about time management. I feel like a lot of times you hear that like you just need to work harder like to get ahead. Like I feel like there's a lot of focus on like put in more hours, persistence, work. But I think over time I've learned that it's a lot more about but having a good work-life balance. Like I can be more productive if I'm more intentional about, when I'm working, I'm working. When I'm not working, I'm not working. Like having like a really good balance between like your work, mental health, and physical health has really helped me be more productive. Like sleep is so incredibly important too.
It's huge, yeah.
And then I think when I really learned how to manage my time was when I started taking on more things. Like when I joined a nonprofit and started working with this nonprofit after work, I was putting in like 4 to 5 hours outside of work a week on top of this. So it was like a rude awakening of like, okay, like how do I manage my time and how do I find time to do this? And I think something that I learned then was that we can have the time if we're like thoughtful and intentional. In terms of more tactical things, I'm a bullet journaler.
Nice.
It's something that...
but like for the audio people, I wish you could see this. Like it's a beautiful spread that I have here of like all the notes and everything. It's just gorgeous. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, I love being organized, and I love journals, and I love like writing down and like thinking about and planning my week and month and year.
Yes.
So it's something that I've done for a really long time, and I think the most important thing is not really that you have like a beautiful spread or like, amazing to-do list. I think it's more about like really thinking about like what are the most important things that I want to accomplish this week. So I go through this every week, like every like Monday morning. I'm like, okay, what are the most important things that I need to get done? Because at the end of the day, like what really matters are those important things. Like a lot of the little things, like you don't really, they're not going to move the needle in your life or your work necessarily. But I think really focusing on like, what are the things that I want to accomplish? And then everything else will fall in place.
Awesome. Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add? Startup life, work-life balance, being a Latina in tech. Anything else you'd like to add?
I think something that I think is really important for all of us is like as we're, it's like a hard world out there, in a way, but it's not impossible. I think there's a lot of really great and amazing success stories. And if you listen to some of the other Google podcasts, you're listening to a lot of these success stories. I think something that I always remind myself and like try to remind other people is as we are like moving ahead and as we're succeeding to like bring other people along, like extend your hand and help your like community and help other people move up with you. Because I think that's the only way that we're going to be able to change, the face of Silicon Valley. And I think that's how we're going to be able to really, make an impact and make really exciting and amazing products and have a more inclusive ecosystem is if we all kind of like jump in and help each other and help other people around us. And I don't think you need to be, 5 years into your career to do that. I think this is something that anyone can do. Like if you're in college, you can help people as they're applying to college. If you're in your first job, you can give tips to, college students who are looking for their first job. So I think there's always different ways that you can keep pulling people up alongside of you. Because at the end of the day, like it's not an impossible path. I think it's definitely doable and we can get really far. But I think having that support and that community and having someone who can show you, the roadmap can go a really long way.
Definitely. Oh, drops mic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you so much.